.87 miles, 8 minutes 41 seconds per mile, 139 beats per minute today for my run commute home on the first day of my taper for the Houston Marathon. Now, I'll be completely honest, I'm not really sure how to taper. I understand the concept. The concept is you've been working hard and you need to now rest up so that your legs are as fresh as they can be before the actual race. The other thing being that any workouts that you do will take a couple of weeks for the results to show up in your legs. And so any workouts you do, say shorter or closer than 2 weeks before your actual race, you might feel the tiredness of at your race, but you won't feel the benefits for until after the race. Which is, I think, probably a little bit of an oversimplified way of looking at it, but it kind of, on a gut level, kind of makes sense. The ultimate thing being that you want to be as fresh as you can be. There's a difference in terms of trying to run fast in the middle of a long training week versus running fast after you've had a couple of days off. And it's not just about not running or taking complete rest days, although that's going to be a part of it for me. The idea is to reduce mileage a little bit, reduce intensity a little bit, let anything that's been bothering you, if it can, hopefully heal up a little bit. So for me, the things that I'm going to be looking at is reducing mileage, although I'm not sure exactly how much, because if I reduce, a lot of people say you go down like 70%, 2/3 of what you have been running. For me, my last week was 90 miles. If I do 2/3 of that, I'm still at 60 miles, which seems like a lot of mileage to run in a taper week, but we'll kind of play it by ear. And then the next week, I'm not sure exactly how many miles I'm going to run. Again, I'm going to just play it by ear. I'll probably still have some marathon heart rate or so marathon effort level miles in there, just to make sure my body is still feeling in tune with it. And as I'm becoming more rested, understanding what's the level of effort going to be required to get to that marathon heart rate. So kind of just more like diagnostics really than it is a workout, and also for the mental part of it, so that way I don't go into the marathon race thinking I haven't done anything nearly this difficult in 2 weeks. That seems kind of daunting to me. So that's kind of what I'm planning for running. The other things that I'm planning for is to sleep more. I'm hoping to get at least 6 hours of sleep a night for the next 2 weeks, if not more. 7, I think, is like my optimal number. For the past week or so, I've been getting about 7 hours of sleep a night, and it feels great. I'm also looking at the quality of sleep. And so when I wear the Polar watch, when I wake up in the morning, it tells me like how good my sleep was. And at first when I started using this, it seemed a little bit kind of arbitrary, like how can I get 7 hours of sleep and it not be good? All 7 hours of sleep is better than, say, 4 hours of sleep. And I think generally that's true. But what I have noticed is that if I'm not sleeping well, the watch knows, even if I don't know, and that shows up in my legs later in the day when I'm running. And so that's something else that I'm keeping an eye on. And so I want to maintain a little bit better kind of sleep hygiene, I guess. And make sure that there's fewer interruptions or for fewer potential interruptions, making sure I'm more comfortable sleeping on a bed that's like kind of like the right level of firmness for me. For example, at my mother-in-law's house, the bed that I've been sleeping on there is extremely soft. It's too soft for me. And even though I sleep a long amount of time there, it's not as kind of rejuvenating or restful. And so I think I'm tossing and turning a little bit more in the middle of the night, even though I don't realize it. The watch tells me that I did. And I definitely did notice it as well. And so those are the kinds of things that I'm kind of keep an eye on in terms of sleep. Trying to get as routinized as I can for that, at least for the next 2 weeks. And then eating is another thing that I'm going to try to pay attention to a little bit more during this taper. Now, during this entire marathon training block, eating is something I've been paying a lot more attention to than normal. Left to my own devices, I will eat a diet full of pizza and junk food. And so I've been aware of that, and I've been trying to avoid that a little bit more, trying to keep more healthy proteins in my diet rather than just loading up on only carbs and kind of fatty proteins like cheese and dairy. And so that's something I'll keep an eye on, not to change anything, but to kind of continue things as I've been doing them, as I've cleaned things up a little bit in terms of my diet. One thing that I normally do during a taper is I normally kind of like let myself eat all like the sweets and processed foods that I want to. And so I end up eating like a lot of cakes, donuts, muffins, cookies, that kind of thing. I'm trying to stay away from that a little bit. It should be a little bit easier to do that now too, since the holidays are over, but kind of maintain a regular diet of eating more food rather than treats, if I can do that. So those are kind of like the main things that I'm going to do. In addition to that, I'm going to take some rest days. I'll probably take at least one rest day this week, which is something that I really haven't done very much of. I've taken 2 rest days this entire marathon training block, and those were kind of unintentional because I wasn't feeling well. I was at my mother-in-law's house. I think the sleep had something to do with that. Also, a lot of the mileage had something to do with that too. But this week, I'll probably take at least one rest day. There's some nasty weather coming in. Not snow, not the good kind of bad weather, but the bad kind of bad weather, like in the low 30s and raining, like that kind of weather, the kind of weather that tends to make me catch a cold. That's coming into Chicago, so I'll probably take a rest day to avoid some of that. And then next week, I'll probably take at least 2 rest days. I don't know that I'll do them back-to-back rest days, but maybe one earlier in the week and one on my travel day Friday. So that's kind of the way I'm laying out my taper. I'm not sure that I'm doing it right. I'm not sure that there's like kind of a one and only one way to do it right. I think it's going to just depend on where you are and how banged up you are going into the taper after your peak week in terms of how you're supposed to do it. I'm feeling relatively good. The only one thing that I have in terms of little like niggles or nagging injuries is that thing that for those of you who have been watching the channel for a while, know that every once in a while I get kind of flare-ups, symptoms of what sounds like a Morton's neuroma in my right foot. I started feeling that. That might have something to do with the fact that I ran in the carbon rockets the last weekend for a 20-mile run. So it's not hurting me, but it's something that I'm like, okay, this is kind of like the things that I noticed that leads up to the other thing that is something that can bother me. So I've been running a lot in Max Cushion shoes. I've been running in the Bondi 6. I'm going to take it easier on that foot until it has a chance to kind of go away. So that's the one thing that I'm kind of worrying about. Not worrying about, keeping an eye on. I don't really think that there's anything I can do with it. I think if I massage it, it's one of those things that if you massage it, it makes it worse. I'm not sure, but I'm just going to kind of leave it be. Hopefully the rest and the lighter mileage will help the thing kind of just resolve on its own. Other than that, I'm just going to try to do some positive thinking, remind myself of all the good work that's been done during this marathon training block, and focus on just getting to the race in as best a condition as I can. There's no more work that I can do, but I can make sure that everything, all the work that has been done is placed in the best position to succeed that it can. So that's kind of my goal. If you have any questions about the taper, I probably can't answer them for you, but put them down in the comments below. I know there's a lot of others who have a lot more experience and expertise in this than I do that are in the comments that could maybe answer that question for you. Or if nothing else, I just love to talk to you guys about what you're doing and how I would approach things or what I'm doing. If you have any more questions about that, I'd love to talk to you guys about it more down there. Before I go, I want to remind you guys about the charity runner for this week. This week it's Thomas Conibere, who's going to be running the London Marathon and raising money for the Meningitis Research Foundation. I was happy to donate $70 to Thomas's fundraising efforts, and I'll post a link in the description in case you'd like to learn more. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video, and I will see you tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?